It's 2v2 Nation Wars, and we're starting out with what's a bit of a dream team for me here. We've got Reynor teaming up with Clem, two world-class 1v1 players. Whoa, something's going down. That is an insanely fast pool out of Denver. Oh, Stephano's dropped. They are having a discussion. Oh, and it's on purpose. Stephano dropped out on purpose. We'll have to talk about this way more after the cast, but this is a thing you can actually do in 2v2. Stephano drops out and gives all his money to Denver. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but it's actually a strategy that works. It gives Denver a super boost, and now the Reynor and Clem team on the south side of the map have to worry about a really early rush timing. Or not. I'm kind of super confused, because usually this is a Ling rush, and Denver just went double gas here. An incredibly fast double gas, by the way. Pool's already done, and it's a Roach Warren. Okay, Clem is scouting. He needs to see this, but he should probably already know. Denver's already started his Roach Warren, and Reynor's just putting down his expansion now. Holy Hannah, it's not Denver, it's Super Denver. He is channeling the dead spirit of Stephano. His natural's almost done. Clem still doesn't have a Rax, but he is starting a second one. But as crazy and scary as Denver sounds, do you really want to take on the micro of Reynor and Clem by yourself? I don't care how much money you give me, I'd be sweating bullets. Roach Warren about to finish already. You know how we're always talking about how tiny little things at the beginning of the game snowballed into the mid game and late game? Well, Denver's got a bunch of those tiny little things, and it's really showing early. Clem sees it. How's he gonna react? Roach is under production already. He's gonna finish walling off, but what he really needs is a factory. He's ahead of me. He's got his factory down. I think Terran has to have Cyclones or tanks to hold this. I like tanks, but the elite Terrans always go for Cyclones. I got a video somewhere explaining why that is. Reynor sending out early Lings. What they really have to have is a joint defense here, but if Reynor can somehow slow down Denver, even just a smidgen. Oh, a bunker going down. Very good for Clem. If they can hold the initial push, they'll be in good shape, but it's gonna be a really tough hold here. Clem stutter attacking that Overlord. I think that's gonna be a first blood when he gets it, but the real story is there's Ravagers coming down to his doorstep. It's Marines and Lings against Ravagers, and lots of them. This is so cool. Reynor and Clem are bringing knives to a gunfight, but it's 2v1. I've totally misadvertised this. Reynor's sending his Lings at Stephano's workers. You just saw them respond. The reason they can do that is Denver is permitted to micro Stephano's units. I'm trying to repair this bunker for dear life, trying to buy some time, but that's like a super bile. He's just gonna one-shot that thing down, I think. Clem, proving me wrong. He's gonna save that bunker. Reynor trying to back it up with the spine crawler. Denver gets the bunker. There is almost nothing left to defend. Reynor's expansion is naked. He's not gonna get that spine down. It's 5 Ravagers and 2 Roaches in his base. Clem has to help. He absolutely has to. There's no way Reynor can hold this on his own. Reynor tries to make a Ravager and it just gets focused right down. Oh my god, he's gonna lose his main too. Clem is trying to distract or delay him. Anything he can do to try to buy some time. Reynor's got a Queen and drones. That is it. No, he's got a single Roach in there. Clem's got his Cyclone. It absolutely does not have mag form accelerator yet, but it's still deadly enough that Denver can't ignore it. He's got to keep Denver busy enough to somehow save that hatch. Files are in the air. Oh, he hits the hatch. Clem's pulled all his boys to defend. Denver is not reinforcing. If somehow they can hold this, Clem tries to pin him in the corner with the SCVs. He's got to surround. The SCVs are channeling their inner Zerglings. There's only 2 Ravagers left, but the hatch isn't deep in the red. Files hit, but Reynor transfuses it. Denver trying to focus it down. Reynor's Roaches chase after those Ravagers. He gets it. They have held. And now the tables are turned and it's Denver who's in so much trouble. Clem and Reynor now have a supply that's greater than Denver's, and of course they've got 4 hands. Denver says, true, but I got the money. He makes 6 more Ravagers. And if you count Stephano's workers, which you should, then Denver's got way more workers than Clem and Reynor. He's up 7 drones. And he's taken a 3rd, which for all intents and purposes is his 4th, but he has to hold that though. Here comes Clem's Cyclone already, and it has its angry headlights on. This game is absolutely nuts, but it's also kind of like a game that should never happen. Those early game timings were absolutely impermissible. You can't get Ravagers that fast. You just can't. So I thought it was Clem and Reynor who were attacking, but turns out really they've got nothing. Denver's coming right again. He is steamrolling everything in his path. Clem and Reynor absolutely have to group their units together. They're making a stand at the top of the ramp. Queen, Ravager, and Cyclone there to meet Denver. Denver bullies his way up the map. He just starts killing everything, but it's costing him units. He has to pull back. Reynor and Clem have held again. They have like nothing, but they're still holding. They are holding this together with spit polish. You gotta be impressed with Denver though. I had no idea the strategy was so effective, and it probably isn't unless you've got the mad skills that Denver has. I actually cast a game where Denver takes on 4 players by himself. Not pros, but good enough players to illustrate the point. He is no stranger to taking on more than one player, so maybe Denver's exactly the right guy for this kind of strat. Okay, so Clem's getting his expansion down. Oh, but Denver's sensed it. He's coming to put a stop to it. Reynor's there to defend it. Looks like he might have enough. Oh yeah, Clem's gonna add in a pair of Cyclones. That's gonna be too much firepower for Denver. He has to pull back. Nope, he's not. He's gonna push it. He could throw away his army here if he's not careful. I think Denver's feeling the pressure. He knows the longer this game goes on, the more stable Clem and Reynor are gonna be. And then his initial advantage isn't gonna matter. Yeah, Denver gets to 200 supply before anybody else. But if Clem and Reynor get to 100 each, it's even. And then if they get bigger than that, Denver's at a disadvantage. And that's before you even get to the 4 hands versus 2 thing. Reynor tries to cut Denver off and it doesn't work so well for him. The key here seems to be the need for teamwork between Clem and Reynor. Every time they split apart, Denver pounces. Like right here. Reynor pulled back, Clem didn't. And so now Denver's thinking about coming back. Oh, Clem's got tanks now. That's a big deal. Tanks and Cyclones. That's tough for Ravagers to deal with. Clem kills an Overlord and supply blocks Denver. Well, for 0.2 seconds anyway. Reynor's really recovered. He's at 42 drones. That's more than Denver. He's getting himself a lair and an Evo chamber. Denver already has 2 Evo chambers. He's researching +1/+1, and he's also getting roach speed and burrow. Clem's gonna spot that with a scan. It's so hard to gauge this game. Denver is absolutely ahead, but he needs to be doubly ahead, probably more so. Reynor takes a third. His income is actually higher than Denver's, but those stats don't show the money that he's getting from Stephano. Reynor starts up +1 range, but he's also getting Overlord speed. Denver's sticking with Roach Ravager. He's making a big round of them. Clem starts up Stim. He is hurting economically. I was gonna guess that Denver was gonna transition to Mutus, but I was wrong. Let's just admit it. I don't know the 2v1 meta, but neither does anybody else. Except for possibly Denver. Once again, Denver's gonna make a play for Clem's natural. This time there's tanks here though. Reynor starts up roach speed. It's already done for Stephano. Rocks fall, roaches lead in. They're gonna soak the tank fire for the Ravagers. But Reynor's got files of his own and Denver has to dodge them. I love Clem's choice to go with tanks. It's gonna make it so hard for Denver to break him, and that's gonna buy time, which is exactly what Reynor and Clem need. It's what Denver cannot afford to give his opponents. So he's gonna opt for the non-tank guarded target. He's gonna go after Reynor's third here. Denver forces his opponents to hold at the ramp, and that means he's gonna get free shots at the third. Clem needs to transition those tanks, but they are too immobile. Third falls, Denver strikes a big blow. Maybe this game even morphs into some kind of a contain. Denver can't bust up that ramp, but he's not gonna let Clem and Reynor expand. I don't know if he can still do it though. Clem and Reynor now have more supply than him. And he's playing Roach Ravager, so it's probably even worse than it looks. Clem's about to finish Stim. Reynor's got an infestation pit on the way, and he's actually started up a lurker den. It's a very early lurker den, but he's got the economy to support it. If this keeps up, it's gonna be like a game of Age of Empires, and Denver's gonna be like stuck on the Stone Age. Denver's like, I don't care. I'm bringing a lot of stone. Oh, and that includes burrowed roaches sneaking into Reynor's main. He goes after the weakened lair. Reynor transfuses it and starts up Hive Tech to save it. He is so close to losing it. Can Denver get it? It looks like the drones are trying to repair, but they're actually attacking the roaches. Meanwhile, Clem is showing off his newfound Stim. He's going right at the Ravagers. Denver loses the war on both fronts. And suddenly he's thinking, 2 versus 1, this isn't very fair. And Clem's like, dude, you signed up for this. Don't you love how I know exactly what the players are thinking inside their heads? How many other casters do you know have telepathy? Seriously, I'm raising my game here. I am the Professor X of Starcraft. If only it were true, I have no idea what the players are thinking, other than, could this game please be over? They have to be exhausted. This game has been crunch time since the 1 minute mark. Oh, Denver's getting baited into a trap here. He scans to reveal the tunneling roaches, and boom! Denver still has the largest supply of the 3 players, but if you add Clem and Reynor together, Denver's in huge trouble. I feel like we need a sound effect of a window closing. Denver's getting his +2/+2, but until he does, he's tied on upgrades with Reynor, and Clem's about to catch up. Denver takes a moment to control Stephano and has him make a round of drones. Oh, Clem's turning to the offensive. He's got a dropship full of Marines here. That's not a lot of dudes in the big scheme of things, but I think the idea is he wants to stretch Denver's APM and attention. Every time he has to fight 2 battles at once and Clem and Reynor only have to fight 1, they're coming out on top. Also, there are now lurkers. Denver has to pull back. He can't do anything until he gets protection. And pulling back isn't a bad idea because he's got to deal with Clem. Anywho, Denver does have overseers on the way, and I think he's got enough to hold this drop in the main, but the problem is it's going to take all of his attention. And that is not where he wants the focus of this game. Raynor's hive is done and he's researching seismic spines. That's the lurker range upgrade. It's really going to limit the utility of roaches. Denver's going to hit before it's here though. He's bringing his overseers. Biles are pretty good against burrowed lurkers, but there are biles on both sides here. It is a bilicious environment. It's like acid rain from the 1990s. Only there's a tank in the background firing. Oh my god, is Denver making this happen? How is he doing this? No, he can't. He's got to pull back. Raynor's supply got decimated. Denver's maxed. Orders a round of 21 roaches. That's not on the house. He pays for that. And he's even got something of a mineral bank. Denver's gonna attack in again, and he busts his way up to the tanks. He lands his biles. 1 tank survives. Reynor reinforces with fresh workers, and his expansion is gonna hold. I had counted Denver out, but he is still doing this. Denver's kind of cheat exploit advantage that he had at the beginning of this is kind of worn off. So instead, what he's doing is he's just taking on 2 of the world's top 10 players. If this game doesn't make you love Denver, nothing will. I never even got a chance to give the guy an intro. I blame Stephano. He threw a killer curveball into this game. Here comes a 200 supply Denver once again. He's got the numbers, but he's up against lurkers, spines, and tanks. Reynor transfuses his spore. He wants to keep it alive. That's what he's using for vision of those burrow roaches. Speaking of which, a cluster of them snuck into Clem's expansion. They forced the SCV pull, but they are now getting beaten back. Raynor's got his 4th base up now. He's gonna start saturating that. He orders 14 drones. He's almost gonna have as much as Stephano plus Denver combined. That makes me super worried for Denver, and I get why he's continuing to attack. He's gonna try for banelings. He already researched the speed upgrade. Centrifugal hooks. If Denver can orchestrate a massive trade of units, then perhaps he can get his advantage back. But tanks have always been pretty good against banelings, and Clem has a lot of them. Raynor's sacking an overlord to see if there's a tech switch he should know about. He's gonna see the baneling nest. But at this point, they can already see the banelings rolling around their base. Clem's gonna try to wall off with depots, but I think he's too late. Oh, Reynor did get his lurkers in position. Lurker plus tank, that is so much damage to Denver, and he GG's. Okay, we'd better talk about what just happened here and what Denver and Stephano were trying to pull off. They sure came close at several points. If Raynor's main hatch fell, I think Denver and Stephano win this game, and Denver was within a hair's breadth of getting that hatch. As you can imagine, there's a big debate over whether this dropout strat actually works and whether it pays off. I had just assumed it wouldn't work at the pro level, but Denver is clearly making me question that. As you can see from the in-game comments in the chat, even some of the observers were confused and surprised by it. So let me start by explaining how it works. To understand the dropout strategy, you first need to know a bit about how multiplayer, specifically 2v2, works. If you're like me, you've mostly been enjoying 1v1 games, as that's where the highest level players normally gravitate. Thank you, Nation Wars, for mixing it up. Now, the first thing to understand is that in 2v2, you have the option of donating money to your ally. Duh. Now, if you can imagine, based on what we just saw, doing that in the opening minute is pretty advantageous. It's so good that Blizzard fixed this by coding a rule into the game. You can't share in the opening 5 minutes. What Stephano did by dropping out instantly was circumvent this rule. It's an exploit. If a player drops out, 3 things happen. Number 1, all their existing money goes to their ally. Number 2, the dropout's 12 workers continue to mine as a default. Even though we couldn't always see them in the replay, the money the drones were earning was all going to Denver automatically. No requesting or transfer required. Number 3, Stephano gets to see the opening build order of Clem and Reynor as he exits the game. That last point is not really a big deal. It's not a shocker to anyone that Clem was building a supply depot, but it could have maybe been significant if it revealed Reynor was 12 pooling, for example. Presumably, Stephano can then relay this info to Denver. What is a big deal is that starting cash. Denver effectively starts the game as a 2-base Zerg. He can now get his pool down much faster, and if he wants, he can rush. It works out to 25 seconds faster. Imagine defending a 12 pool rush 25 seconds earlier. It's deadly. This is the first time I've ever heard of it being used for a Roach Ravager rush, which is apparently pretty deadly too. Remember, pro level players scrap for every early edge they can think of to squeeze out just 5 more minerals as it impacts their razor close games. Things like skipping scouting, delaying gas. This is a way to get all those benefits without any of the costs. Well, that's not true. There is a cost. You lose your ally. But it's more than just early money coming in. There's also an in-game saving with this strat. Instead of having 2 players making units, all the units come from 1 player. This changes things. If you research a single upgrade, it affects all of that team's units instead of just 1. So if you get +1 attack, you get double the value for it. You also save money as you need to build less structures, especially if you are a Zerg with centralized production. 2 Zerg players need to build 2 spawning pools and 2 Roach Warrens. Denver only needs 1 spawning pool, 1 Roach Warren, and he's still fielding the same number of roaches, probably more. This means he has extra money available for even more roaches or ravagers, and extra units are what he is betting will tip the game in his favor. The advantage Clem and Reynor have is that they have 4 hands on the keys and mice, 4 eyes on the screen, and 2 brains working on solutions. At its highest level, this is really a battle pitting micro versus macro. Now, so you appreciate, when Stephano is gone, Denver can micro Stephano's units. The rules for this are a bit wonky. He can buy stuff for Stephano using his own money, which he's getting from Stephano, but he gets to use Stephano's supply. That's good, as building units for Stephano doesn't count towards Denver's 200. But it's bad in that Denver has to worry about Stephano's units getting supply capped. You'll see in this game, Denver just used Stephano's supply to farm for cash. He made a bunch of workers, and he eventually even expanded. So, what do you do as a player to respond to this dropout strategy? What happens if it's used against you? First off, if it happens and you see 1 player drop and his partner remain in the game, it almost certainly means you are being rushed. So, turtle up. Second, it is probably impossible to defend this alone. Teamwork is essential. That means the map really comes into play. With those shared base maps, it's a lot easier to join with your ally and set up a joint defense. On some maps, though, you can be as many as 20 seconds away from your ally, and if you don't position yourself in advance, your arrival can be simply too late. That means it's very important to figure out where your opponent is going to hit. Zerg is especially useful and initial overlords need to be arranged to get intel on this. In fact, what some 2v2 players recommend is that what you do is you join armies as quick as you can and try to meet the cheeser. If you know there's an obvious or common attack path, you can head them off there. If it's possible, you can even meet them at the exit to their own base. There's a debate here. Meeting in a central spot on the map means this guarantees you and your ally will fight together, which, as I've said, is essential, but it also means you'll lose out on ramps, wall-offs, and static defenses, all three of which can be life-saving. So pick your poison. The last thing to note is that this dropout strategy is also used by Protoss for cannon rushes. Imagine, if you will, being cannon rushed by a player who has double money, extra pylons, extra cannons, maybe shield batteries in there, or even gateways. It's a nightmare. How many workers do you have to pull to shut that down? You probably don't even have enough, and we'll have to find a different way to defend it. If I was a 2v2 player, I would lose sleep over it. So if you played 2v2 and a player drops out and your remaining opponent is Protoss, on top of everything I've just said, you gotta scout for that hidden probe. So my question, which I would love to hear from you guys, is this. Blizzard has clearly known about this dropout strategy since 2010, and they never patched it. Should they have? On the one hand, it's clearly an exploit, and it wasn't an intended part of the game. And I can't imagine it would feel very fair to lose to this. But on the other hand, as a spectator, man, was this fun to watch. As soon as I finally clued in that Stephano dropped out on purpose, I got super interested in this game. Thank you to Funka for explaining it in the chat. Starcraft, as you probably know, has a huge tradition of players coming up with strats that the designers never intended. Things like muta stacking and the extractor trick, Brood War shooting shuttle, just to name some. This is called going beyond the designer experience, and it's often considered a sign of a truly great game where the players start evolving the game in unintended directions, which, newsflash, Starcraft totally is a truly great game. Is the 2v2 dropout strategy part of this tradition, or is it just an annoying cheat? You decide. I mean, forget blaming Blizzard, our favorite whipping dog, for a second. Reynor makes the point. You could just make a rule that this dropout tactic shouldn't be allowed. Should Nation Wars have outlawed this? All good stuff to think about. Also think about subscribing, peeps. We've got some really good games scheduled, and I'd love for you to catch them. So from my base to yours, Zugzwang out. To continue your StarCraft journey, Nova advises you to click the video in the upper rectangle. But Kerrigan warns you to watch your 6 and click the video in the bottom rectangle. Or you can stimpack your StarCraft experience. Subscribe to Zugzwang StarCraft. Just hit the circle. From my base to yours, Zugzwang out.